Throughout all my time as a Deepwoken PvE player and PvE content creator, there has been one question that I've been asked way more than any others.
Yo Skipper, what's the best PvE build and how do I make it?
However, the truth isn't as simple as one singular build being the best for everything, because while you can make a PvE build to do everything, that PvE build is usually going to be overshadowed in many areas by dedicated builds. Plus, with how many different playstyles and situations there are in the game, if you only want to make one PvE build, it's going to be different depending on the game modes you want to do, what you want to get from them, and how you want to play. So today I'm going to show you how to make the perfect PvE build for you. For this video, I am condensing thousands of hours of information worth of build making into a single video.
Wait, but how am I meant to keep track of what to do? Surely you can't expect me or anyone else to remember all the steps to a PvE build.
To fix this, I've organized these thousands of hours of information into simple steps you should be taking to make the best PvE builds. Whether you want so much damage that you grip Chaser on the first cycle, want to be so tanky that your health bar literally doesn't move, or just want to get insanely rich at PvE. This is the ultimate guide to PvE build making. So starting off with the first step, you need to choose a game mode. There is 5 game modes that are worth doing in Deepwoken: Ferryman, Maestro, Layer 2, Hell mode, and the Diluvian. The reason Duke, Kaido, and Primadon aren't here is because of a lack of good drops for the earlier two, or in Primadon's case, there isn't much of a point to beating him in under 3 minutes due to the respawn timer he has. As for Hell mode and the Diluvian, you can usually use one build for both of them. However, out of the two, Diluvian is on average a bit harder, but generally will give you better loot. You can get almost every legendary weapon in the game, plus all the relics you could need and high star gear. The only downside to both game modes is there is a risk to wiping if the wrong mobs spawn, or you simply just get unlucky with getting stunned. So you'll generally be running it with anywhere from 5 to 2 people, and that'll give you consistent clears. While you can solo the Diluvian, it's not really worth trying to make a new build to do it. I recommend either using my Silent Heart or the standard Frost build everyone else uses. Making a build to solo the Diluvian is too risky to do, especially if it's your first build. Ferryman is simpler than the rest. It's good for getting Idols of Young Shoal, Moon's Eye Tomes, and Storm's Eyes. Maestro drops Crypts, Curves, Imperial Staffs, and a Sinner's Ash, and Layer 2 is the only way to get Bloodforged Crowns, easily the most valuable item in the game at the moment. You can also get most legendary weapons too, plus Chaser can drop a Sinner's Ash and Moon's Eye Tome, which is very nice. So these are roughly what you can get from these game modes. Just decide what you want to do. Keep in mind the latter 3 have next to 0 chance of wiping, so you can usually use one build, while Hell mode and the Diluvian are a lot riskier, but generally will give you more reward.
Wait, but Skipper, how do I know what good builds or strategies are for each of these bosses?
Well, the first way is simply knowing the bosses. I recommend watching my boss guide after this for a lot more detailed explanation on how to actually beat them, since I do talk about good builds in that video. But the second and arguably better way to learn bosses and game modes is the second step: research. Researching PvE builds does wonders for producing your own at the end of the day. The collective knowledge of the whole community is just significantly higher than what one single person can think of. An example of how I've used research to improve my builds is because I found out how good the Chaotic Charm talent was from the solo Diluvian build that Sad Lad did, and that became an important part on my Silent Heart build, another build that can also solo the Diluvian. So if I didn't do the research, that build would not exist or be as good as it is.
But what if I want to find other PvE builds that aren't yours to modify?
Well, there's quite a lot of PvE channels on YouTube to choose from. These are a few people that I think have made a variety of very good PvE builds to study. I'll leave a link in the description to these two, just because they have a very good track record with a lot of different PvE builds. Although there is a bunch more channels and good videos for builds that I will also leave in the description. And of course, the second way is by finding builds on the speedrun.com leaderboards. Although this method does require either the builds to be public or for you to have a lot more knowledge on builds, it is still a very good way to find out what strategies you should be using. An example of this would be studying how every top run for Ferryman uses Gale. So you're essentially just shopping around until you find a strategy that you want to play and that fits the game mode that you like doing. This is roughly the shortened version of the good build requirements for each game mode. Hell mode requires high offense, and most importantly fast and high damaging moves. Diluvian requires really high damage and really high defense, with optionally really fast healing. Very similar to Hell mode, but for the Diluvian, defense matters a lot more. Ferryman, fast multi-hitting moves like Tornado or Warden's Blades. Maestro use a Provident Thorns weapon and good mantras. Layer 2 requires high DPS and high mobility. Defense is pretty useless here since you can always heal with something like Conditioned Runner, since the Layer 2 routes have a lot of running. But yeah, this is the very simplified version of what you should be looking for in builds. I do go into a little bit more detail on my boss guide. However, I will be leaving good examples in the description as well. Once you get good enough at PvE builds and build up enough knowledge, you can guess the stats of a build just from watching a run, although this may take some time to learn how to do. Anyways, the third trick is optimizing the builds. When you think you've made a very good layout for a good PvE build, often a lot of the time you can get more bang for your buck just by using a different set of stats. Let's go over an example of what's wrong with this build. Keep in mind this is specifically a build to only farm Ferryman. I'll give you a few seconds to think. The answer is taking all the points out of the agility stat and investing it into strength pre-shrine. All that the agility really gives you is Speed Demon and Conditioned Runner, two talents that don't really make Ferryman any easier, since you don't need to heal, and you're really only M1ing Ferryman twice in the whole run. Moving the strength to post-shrine as well gets you even more points to spend, making your stats look like this. And if these stats look familiar to long-time viewers, it's because it's the exact same Gale build I use for Ferryman, and is an example of how I've optimized it to get even more points into Gale and Intelligence.
How do I know what talents and mantras I should get, or are even worth investing stat points?
Generally, really good builds want to focus on 1 to 2 high requirement but good cards. Then you spend the rest of your points to put it into weapon, your element, or get a bunch of low investment but really good cards. Generally, you'll be looking for stuff that's under 30 points to get, or has multiple other uses. An example of this would be Agility, which on layer 2 builds gets you Conditioned Runner, Speed Demon, and Kickoff. Just playing around with your stats and seeing what you can get if you stretch your points a little bit more is very useful for trying to optimize your build. Finally, on screen, I'll put the really good mantras for Frost Draw, Iron Sing, Flame, and Gale. These for attunements are the best solo attunements, or just attunements to primarily focus on in your build, although going Silent Heart gives you even more points to spend. However, the issue does come with the fact that you'll have no mobility, so as long as you're not planning to grind layer 2 that much, a Silent Heart is still a good option. The fourth and final step is efficiency. Having a very efficient PvE build can make a massive difference. This step is similar to optimizing. However, instead of making the build stats better, you're making the build clear whatever you want to much faster and most importantly more consistently. An example of a build that is very fast but not consistent would be the builds that are currently at the top of the Glitch Chaser speedruns. While they can clear Chaser in 1 minute, the issue is they're not consistent, because of 2 reasons. 1, the flame grab tech to kill doesn't always land, and 2, they don't really have any healing. So that's why you generally want to have some form of either healing in Conditioned Runner, or defense in something like Exoskeleton or Arc Welder. Your damage also allows you to actually kill whatever you want faster, directly increasing the efficiency. For example, if I make a build 1 cycle chaser instead of 2 cycling it, I save about 30 seconds each run, which adds up massively. And the other thing is mobility. This just increases the rate that you achieve objectives. It's most important in layer 2. While it's less important in stuff like Primiton, having mobility in some form can never hurt, because it just makes the build easier to use. And those are the 4 steps that you should be taking to make the best PvE build. You select a game mode, you research what's good, you make a build, then optimize it, and finally you make sure the build is actually efficient for what you need. If you follow these steps, you can custom tailor any build in the game to fit what you want to do, whether it's playing supportive, being super tanky, or just dealing a ton of damage. The most important part is simply that you just enjoy the build you make and have fun playing it. And again, I have a bunch of PvE builds on my channel, in my Discord, and a bunch of other people's really good builds linked in the description. A huge thank you to all the content creators who helped voice act in this video. It would not be nearly as good without them, so definitely check them out. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe and check out some more PvE content, and I'll see you all next time.